Hi, guys. Welcome to A Little Help for Our Friends, a podcast for people with loved ones struggling with mental health. Hey, little helpers. It's Dr. Kibbe here. Before we dive into this episode, I wanted to tell you how I could help you navigate the mental health or addiction struggles of the people you love. Cool of Mine is the online coaching platform and community that I built to support you in the moment when you need it the most, like having hard conversations, asserting your needs, or setting boundaries. Even if you're just curious and want to chat about it, book a free call with me by going to the link in the show notes or going to coolamind.com, KULAMIND.com, and click Get Started. Thank you and enjoy the show. Welcome back, little helpers. It's Dr. Kibbe here, and I'm going to talk about a topic that I find fascinating, which is projection. So if you have ever walked away from conversations with someone always feeling blamed and a monster and like you were the villain or the problem, but you have no freaking idea what they're talking about, this episode is for you because that could be a side of projection. So imagine being blamed for having intentions or actions that really feel out of character to you or that you really don't remember happening. Like someone insisting that you are trying to hurt them or accusing you of faults that you're like, what? No one sees me that way, or I don't remember that. That actually might be a situation that's common when you deal with someone with a personality disorder. So I'm going to talk about what projection is and how people with something like borderline personality disorder or narcissistic personality disorder, and even trauma, may project parts of themselves that they don't like onto you. So I'll talk about why it happens and how it could feel so gaslighty and what the theory and therapy behind this behavior actually tell us. And then, of course, I'm going to talk about what to do when you feel like someone's projecting all their stuff on you. And I want to say that I'm talking about gaslighting because when someone projects themselves, their insecurities, their feelings onto you, it can make you feel crazy. It can make you doubt who you are. It can make you doubt what happened. I have a terrible memory, so I'm really susceptible to gaslighting in general. When someone says, you did this, you were thinking this, and I go, I'm pretty sure not. I'm pretty sure I don't have those, and like, I didn't do that. I don't know, but I get so confused. And then I feel in those moments gaslit, but when we talk about gaslighting, I see this on the internet all the time. When we talk about gaslighting, people think it's just like when a evil narcissist tries to make you, doubt everything about yourself, right? And it's almost talked about as deliberate, like your partner intentionally questioning your own sanity in order to, get power over you. And that does happen a lot of the time, but often gaslighting, especially with projection, is not intentional, right? It's not like they are doing it to confuse you and make you doubt who you are. It's just a coping mechanism. Projection is a really crappy coping mechanism. So what is projection? Projection is a psychological defense mechanism where a person unconsciously blames their own unwanted feelings, traits, or impulses or thoughts onto someone else, right? So someone is insecure about something or hates a part of them and they blame someone else for that. They never go, oh yeah, I have that part and you do too or whatever. But it's like, no, you are mean to me. You are judging me. You are angry, right? And the reason why people do that is out of shame, of deep, deep shame. So instead of acknowledging something uncomfortable in themselves, like, oh, I have this part of me that I really don't like, right? Instead of doing that, they say, no, I'm not like that at all. I'm not angry. You are the angry one, right? Sometimes partners who are, think about cheating or even cheating themselves might accuse their partner of being unfaithful, right? By being like, yeah, I don't like this part of me, so I'm going to blame you for it. This is a really, as you can imagine, really bad defense mechanism, but it's how some people learn to survive and learn to cope with, oh, there's there's things living inside me that I hate, and I don't know what to do about them. But unfortunately, this defense, first of all, distorts reality. Like makes them think, I'm perfect. I'm not like that at all. I am passive. I'm a victim. I'm not the one who causes problems at all. And then they just cut out a whole piece of reality. It allows people to avoid confronting their guilt or their shame or even self-hatred by pushing it on other people. This is one of the most classic psychological concepts because it's like such a Freudian thing. This is how psychodynamic and psychoanalytic therapy really got their like bread and butter, because Freud first identified projection like over a century ago, and clinicians have since observed that it's really common in people with like really fragile self-esteem and little self-awareness. We all project things onto each other, right? Like the way we've learned to see ourselves and the world, we see in other people. That just happens. But usually it's kind of like only sometimes. And when push comes to shove, you'd be like, oh yeah, I was kind of a jerk, right? But certain people are so committed to cutting that part of themselves out that they might default on their way of coping, right? They use it often. They project often and for many relationships. And you see that when someone gets really, really defensive a lot, when they can't take any criticism. That's like a core part of borderline and narcissistic personality disorder. If they take any kind of feedback, they're like, no, they shut it down. They react really badly to it. Or they either lash out in anger or they spiral in shame. When someone goes, hey, you did this thing that wasn't great. They go, no, they like can't hold it. They can't say, yeah, all right. Yeah, I can do that. Yeah, I'm at fault for that. I'll work on that. They can't do that. It is shoved out. It's like is an existential threat to the way they see themselves and their whole reality. So projection is called sometimes in this personality disorder world as a primitive defense. So we all have this is psychoanalytic theory. So this is not cognitive behavioral therapy. It's more of a psychodynamic, psychoanalytic world. So they call this primitive defenses, right? Like this way of thinking that happened early in life, and that's how someone copes with pain forever, right? You can see, I see this in my kid where it's like something that he doesn't like. It's like, no, that's on me. No, I don't want that. When he's happy, right? There's like an all or nothing kind of thing. So emotionally, it feels immature because when you grow up, you're able to hold nuance, hold like good and bad into one thing and integrate them. But when you're young, it's like all good or all bad. And some people just stay there. Some people have like arrested development and are emotionally immature and stay in I'm either all good, I'm beautiful, I'm perfect, I'm successful, I'm a victim, or I'm nothing, I'm terrible, I'm weak, I'm terrible, I'm worthless, right? It's all or nothing. So these primitive defenses, at the most extreme level, I'm also talking about splitting, right? That's an old term for seeing yourself as all good or all bad. And then projection is another primitive defense, but it's kind of like, okay, if I'm either all good or all bad, then I'm going to be all good, and you're going to be the one who's all bad. So all this to say is that people with borderline personality disorder and narcissistic personality disorder, or just emotionally immature, externalize the painful parts of themselves, the all bad. Rather than saying like, I feel bad, or I feel unlovable, or I'm kind of a jerk sometimes, they might insist that you are treating them badly or you don't care, when really those feelings started within them. The reason why this happens, there's object relations theory and also a lot of research in identity where it's proposed that the way we see ourselves and our personality development is really dependent on combining all of the different experiences and relationships you have with other people into a whole. So let's say you grow up and you have some good friends who see you as a wonderful person, but then you also have people who think you're a jerk, and you have fights with someone else, and you mix them all together into an integrated personality. I'm sometimes good, I'm sometimes bad. You know what? A really good illustration of this was in Inside Out 2. So if you haven't seen it, please go watch it, because you could see the personality development when it looks healthy. In the movie, Riley, the main character, is going through, different kinds of relationships. She's breaking off from her old friends and getting together with new friends and seeing herself and experimenting with different versions of her. And some are not great. Like, she actually was kind of a jerk to her friends in some moments. And she goes through this like hardcore splitting where she's like, I'm the worst. No, it's your fault. And then at some point she integrates and goes, I'm a good friend, but I also can be really inconsiderate to people sometimes, right? So when you're healthy, you develop into a whole. You might still not like those parts, right? Like, you still might not like the part that's like not a great friend, but you still go, yeah, that's me. That's part of me. It's not all of me, but it's part of me. When you go, oh, I'm either a bad friend or a good friend, that's a primitive defense, right? So it kind of goes along with that projection, right? The idea that you're all bad is so terrible, push it onto other people. So with these personality disorders, or maybe even think about a person in your life that's emotionally immature, it's like they can't hold the two sides. They can't be like, yeah, I meant well, but I also screwed up. They go, I meant well, and you screwed up. And then you go, wait, did I? I don't think I did. And that's the part for the loved ones. That's the part, like the projectee, that is the most distressing, because you're like, what is real? Their view of reality is so different than mine. And specifically reality of who we are in this relationship, right? So I'll give an example in my own life. And when I talk about this, then my mom's going to probably have choice words. But this is just an example of an argument that I had with her recently that really, really hurt me, and was one of the things that I had to draw the line with our relationship. But I was going through, I just gotten my double mastectomy surgery, which is the most intense surgery I hopefully will ever get in my life. Basically, cutting out my two breasts during breast cancer. And I had tubes coming out of me. I was bandaged up, and I just was like so drained. I was so tired and sick that, and I know that my mom loves to take my son over to her house and play, but there was many logistics that I just couldn't handle at that moment, especially because when he comes back, sometimes when he came back from my mom's house, he would get tantrumy, and I talked to my husband, and I was like, I can't deal with the tantruming. I can't deal with him thrashing around while I'm, have literally tubes out of my body. So I told my mom, I think this is not a good idea. Can you just come over? Or can we just not do that plan right now? My son gets really tantrumy and after he comes back from your house, and I just can't deal with that. And she kept texting me. She's like, why? Why is he tantrum? Is it something I did? Did I feed him something wrong? She kept looking for the reason why he was tantruming. And I was like, I don't know. I really don't know. But can you just accept this boundary, please? And then she kept asking, and I was so stupid. I was so sick. And I was like, maybe it's the effect you have on people. And what I meant in that moment was stimulating effect. So I notice when they play, and it's just it hypes him up. And after he gets too hyped up, he gets a little tantrumy. So that's what I meant. But she lost her shit after that. She yelled at me, she screamed at me, I mean, for days. And that was, and she was saying things like, now I know who you really are. You're abusive. You're abusing me. How could you do this to me? All I want is to love, and you're just the worst. Like, she just saw me as the monster. And I kind of expected that was going to happen, because every time I say no to her, that tends to happen. But she was accusing me of things that I was like, whoa, whoa. And to this day, she still talks about that interaction as abuse. And she'll even say things like, you told me never to see your son. You told me I couldn't come over and see him. And I've showed her text messages where I said, please come over and see him here. And I will watch her literally like look away and say, well, you were abusive anyway. Like, she will just not even see the evidence of the other side of my reality. Have you ever experienced something like that? It's maddening. It's maddening. Like, that is the thing that I want to take all of the way she sees me and what I was accused of, and just be like, look at this. Am I really that? Am I really this horrible thing? And especially with a parent, it like affected me over the years, and I'm like, am I that way? And I'm wrestling with this version of me that I'm like, and luckily, after having a lot of relationships, I have a different identity where I'm like, yeah, maybe I'm a jerk a lot of the time, but I'm overall a good person. People outside of my relationship with my mom think I'm a good person. So it doesn't fully engulf me in the gaslight, but there are times where I'm like, oh, I guess I'm a terrible person who's just abusing my mom. So this is a really extreme example, but it can happen with someone who just has such intense emotion dysregulation and also takes no accountability, has no self-awareness. They just take all of their insecurities and all of their feelings and project it onto the other person. And the tricky part is that when they project, it's not completely insane, right? Because then you would just be like, oh, you're just completely not in reality. It's the most insidious and the most gaslighty and dangerous when it is linked to a kernel of truth. So for my mom to say, you were being abusive, you were blaming, a situation on me, and you're saying that I'm bad, and you're saying that oh gosh, I can't remember. You say you don't want me here, and I never can see my son, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, whoa, that's all crazy pants. But it was linked to a kernel of truth where I was saying, yeah, something you're doing might contribute to the tantrums. And to this day, if I'm really being honest, yeah, I think that when they play really hard and it's really exciting and there's all these toys and stuff like that, I see them tantrum more. So in my mind, I was kind of blaming her. I didn't want to say it, I didn't it, but yeah, there's a kernel of truth. I was like a little judgy in that moment. I don't think I was fully abusive. I wasn't a monster. I wasn't telling her she can't see her grandson ever again, but there was that kernel of truth. And so when someone projects so deeply and it hits on some truth inside you, that's the moments where you're like, am I a monster? Are they right? I'm also not here to say that projection or gaslighting is all like an evil plot that has no basis in anything. There's definitely a back and forth here, right? But it can really fuck you up. It can really get you confused. So when you feel like someone is pushing a version of themselves onto you, that's when you have to step back and look at it and be like, oh, this is a projection, right? This is common also in narcissistic personality disorder, because NPD, it's really all about self-image. I had a colleague really nicely describe it as a dysregulation of your self-image. So with BPD, it's a dysregulation of emotion, up and down. You're happy, you're sad, you're really good about blah, blah. With narcissistic personality disorder, it's I'm special, I'm beautiful, I'm successful, I'm on top, or I'm the worst, I'm worthless, I'm ugly, I'm nothing, right? So it's this identity that goes up and down. And that is such a that's such an immature way of seeing yourself, because it's like, who is one thing? Who is always perfect? No one, right? It's like we got some good stuff and then we have some bad stuff. That's like the healthy personality development. I'm successful sometimes when I do these things, and I'm not successful other times. But people with NPD can't handle that nuance. So they have such a fragile ego that they're like, any drop of criticism or any drop of bad or a part of me that is like naughty, I don't want. I can't hold it. I can't hold the nuance. You have it. So for many narcissists, the default mechanism is projection, because they can take all the shortcomings that would be otherwise super threatening, put it on to someone else, right? Whatever that is. If it's like, I'm not the abusive one here. You're the narcissist. You're the narcissist. You're the abuser. I'm a helpless victim. I'm not the angry one. You're the angry one. Or even like weakness. I'm not weak. You're weak. You're sensitive, right? Have you ever heard a narcissist say that, get upset that you're too sensitive? But really they're quite sensitive about, if anyone says anything bad about them, suddenly they fly into like, they kind of collapse, and you're like, wait a minute, you're accusing me of sensitive. What's going on? That's projection. They don't want to admit that they're sensitive to criticism. So it's on you. Blaming, a common thing they do is blaming other people for mistakes, or they kind of like wash it away with justification instead of like, yeah, I fucked up there. I'm so sorry. I tend to be like that. It's like, well, I did it because you made me. I might have made that mistake, but it's pretty much your fault, right? Sometimes it could be so extreme that they accuse you of what they did, or accuse you of having thoughts or intentions that they have, right? Like, you mean to do this bad thing. You mean to cheat on the relationship. And it's like, really? Is that me, or was that you? So really, with narcissistic personality disorder, anything that contradicts this idealized, fanciful, special self-image is pushed onto other people, because otherwise it would trigger deep, deep shame and a whole existential crisis. Projection is a quick escape hatch. They see their own bad traits in you. They get to maintain that they're perfect. They see themselves as perfect, which is the only way they could feel like they could survive. So they can't tolerate shame. And often this is really unconscious. I think the internet talks about narcissists and gaslighting as like this evil plot, a conspiracy to make you crazy. But a lot of the time people do it without realizing it. Like, they're just unaware. Doesn't make it less harmful, but they're just unaware of what they were doing. A really cool example of projection. That's projection, but these primitive defenses of splitting yourself into all these pieces, good or bad, and just not owning a part. A really good example is Fight Club. I could be dating myself at this point, but because at this point it's such an old movie, but it was like a movie of my generation. But Fight Club with Brad Pitt and Edward Norton. I hope I'm not giving too much away, but so if you haven't seen it and want to see it, skip the next few minutes and just watch it. It's so good. But it's interesting. The main character doesn't even have a name. So it's Edward Norton, who's this like trapped, numb, everyday man who literally isn't named in the movie, right? He's nothing. He can't accept anything about himself, is trying to find some feeling of being alive. And he tries to do all the best things, tries to like do all the right stuff, get a job, blah, 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 but he just doesn't feel like a whole person. He goes to all these weird emotional like support groups to try to create this feeling of alive and vulnerable, but it's just almost like a weird compartmentalizing like humanity, right? He's just like going into places where he could feel whole. What he does is he creates a part of himself and projects it onto another person. So he creates this image of Tyler Durden, who's this handsome, aggressive, his pure id, right? It's a spoiler alert, please don't listen to this if you haven't seen, but it's actually a part of the main character, but he literally sees it as another person. You don't see it until the end, but it's actually the same character, but he is just like, he identifies as this downtrodden, like helpless everyday man that he doesn't even see that this really aggressive form of him is inside him. So that, it projects onto like literally a hallucination of another person, but it's like if he saw Tyler Durden and other people. And you could see that when he has this character has a relationship with a woman, she doesn't know who she's dating. She's like, one minute you want me and you're like, you're sexual and you're aggressive, whatever. And the other one, you don't want anything to do with me and you're this other person. It's because that guy just can't deal with the fact that he is both himself and Tyler Durden in one person. And that's what happens with people with BPD and NPD. So what do we even do as therapists with someone who constantly projects, who won't take accountability for a part of themselves? Well, I really learned how to deal with this in my internship at New York Presbyterian Hospital when I learned Transference Focused Psychotherapy. That's a treatment for personality disorders like NPD and BPD. The theory underneath it is what's called object relations theory, saying that we internalized all these different relationships into our personality. We find out who we are by combining all the relationships we have over our lives, and that's who we are, right? So in TFP, this therapy, the therapist kind of like, this is why Freud, so these psychoanalysts are pictured like sitting behind a patient and the patient's just like lying there. The therapist is trying to create a relationship that is just like a container for the patient's inner world, right? They're trying to kind of disappear, like be really neutral and almost like disappear so that the patient can fill up the space with their own stuff. They bring in their own baggage, if you will. Because what you want is for the patient to project the parts of themselves that they hate onto the therapist, which is called transference. So, for example, when I was doing this, I had a couple thoughts, but people who had personality disorders that I worked with, there was one in particular who was like a lovely patient in so many ways, but he was, he would do things that were quite mean. He would put me down a lot. He would laugh at me. He would often like question the way I looked, like he would make like little jabs at me all the time. And when he started to attach and started to get deeper in our relationship, he started to accuse me of judging him, of thinking badly of him, of making fun of him. And that's why in those kind of psychodynamic therapy, it's like the therapist is almost blank. So it's just not even putting anything out there to attach to. It's just like, I'm neutral. And then the patient goes, you're judging me. You're not talking because you're judging. And that is an entryway for the clinician and the patient to explore that part of them. To be like, oh, look at this part that you are so scared of and hate so much that you're pushing it onto the therapist. Where is it coming from? And eventually maybe creating safety so that they can take it in and learn to deal with it and learn to own the parts of themselves they're trying to project. Really, really difficult. This is really hard work. It's really hard because it's, there always is a kernel of truth. Sometimes I'm sitting there and I'm tired and I'm like, oh God, this patient is just so mean to me all the time. And then he goes, you're being judgmental. He was reading like a little kernel of truth. He was maybe like putting more on top of it, but he was latching on to the real thing and being like, yep, this is you. So what do you do when that happens? Well, in that moment, as a clinician, I'm not saying this is what you should do, but as a clinician, that's when we go, okay, great. This is a meat to work with, right? This is a part of you that you don't want to own, but let's explore it and see if we could hold it together peacefully with acceptance. It takes a long time. So over time in TFP, you would kind of like point it out gently and explore it. Like, interesting. You think that I'm being judgmental in that moment. Can you tell me more about that? What feelings are coming up when you think of judgment? When have you felt that before? What thoughts went through your mind as you saw judgment in me? Right? You're just kind of giving them a chance to explore that projection, that perception of you. And then you might say that over and over again. Again, you see that I'm being judgmental. Tell me more about that, right? What does that feel like? Have you felt judgmental? Were you judgmental towards me at all? What did that feel like? Right? So you try to take the projection and look at it together. Like, this is all what therapy is. Taking the painful parts and looking at it together and not blaming anyone and saying, oh, there's a hot potato, you have it or I have it. But it's like, let's examine it and hold it peacefully together until the patient can slowly be like, yeah, I can be judgmental sometimes. And I judged you in that moment. And, I thought that you were being judgmental, but I was thinking that too. Then you're like, okay, he's able to take in that piece. And you want to, like, in that moment, what you're trying to do is helping the patients own their projections. It might take so long because it might be so threatening. It might be the worst. It might be their greatest fear, right? They might have been judged or abused or been hurt by someone, like their parents or whatever, all their life. And they were like, I never want to be like my mom. I never want to be like my dad. They're so judgmental. And admitting that they can be judgmental, that they've learned it and it lives inside them and they can be like their mom or their dad or the abuser is a horrible thought. So they're like, nope, I'm not an angry one. I'm not judgmental. You are. But eventually it could be like, yeah, I could be angry and I could be mean. And I hate that because that's what my mom did to me. But yeah, so now that I could own it, I could work on it. I could soften around it. I could forgive myself. I could see where it comes from. And I can say, you know what? I can be mean a lot, but I'm learning to work with it. I'm learning to hold it. So in TFP, you're working with that transference, that projection, and give it back to the patient. Really, really hard. I don't recommend doing this for your loved one, but just to show you like how a clinician, like a specialist, will work with it. And it's really tough. A lot of our training was to like really be firm and sometimes like admit the truth. Like, yeah, I was judgmental in that moment, but keep gently giving it back to them. That's the hardest part. When I've had patients who just like, especially with BPD or narcissism, who just come in swinging, right? They're like, you're abusive to me. You're a monster. You never help me. You think I'm this. And I'm thinking, what? What are you talking about? Like, you were telling me that I'm amazing and that I'm helping you and that you trust me, and now I'm the monster? Like, how could you accuse me of being this bad person? But that human reaction of defending your reality is something that we have to train ourselves out of as clinicians. And we have to be like, okay, this is not me. This is for them. I'm not going to take this personally. I'm going to use this as part of their healing. Really, really difficult. But here's what you do if you have a loved one who's projecting all their shit onto you. Of course, same with any kind of gaslighting, reality check and ground yourself. That feeling of confusion, of like, what the fuck are they talking about? I didn't do that. That doesn't seem like me. I'm really, I have a really hard time with that because I have such a bad memory, but I find it really helpful, first of all, that a lot of my communications with people are on, you know, text or email, so I could kind of see, but also sometimes I have to reality check with someone who knows me well. So I, turn to someone else like, did I say that? Am I that kind of person? Like, what's going, like, look at this text message with me, right? Of course it's biased because, those people are going to take your side but at least I could reality check that like, this is out of character, or I don't have a memory of it, and that's my reality. Maybe I did do that horrible thing, but I don't remember it, and that's not how I saw that, like, my actions. I definitely didn't intend it. So it's just having that sense of reality in your mind of who you are, it's really helpful. This part's really tricky. I think the gaslighting comes in when, if like two people, you're in this kind of conflict with someone who are, who tend to project onto you. And everyone is like, you're treating this projection like a hot potato. Like, you're the monster. No, you're the monster. No, like, no one wants to own it. No one wants to be the problem. So you just keep blaming each other and citing evidence for why you are actually the one at fault. No, you are the actually one at fault. You are the one who doesn't care, blah, 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 right? Get out of that. Get out of like, who is the sole owner of this terribleness, this part that no one wants to accept. And you could say, okay, let's just all own a piece of it, right? Even if there's grounding in truth, in a kernel of truth, own that part. Take accountability for what's true, right? I did try this with my mom. I could have done this stronger, and but yeah, in those moments, I was so tapped out and so like frustrated. I was just like, yeah, maybe it is your stimulating energy or effect on people that is doing this to Jackson and making this all complicated. Like, yeah, I don't think I'm abusive, but own that part, right? And check in with yourself and check in with other people who know you, right? And eventually you might get better at doing this, not internalizing that projection. Don't internalize the blame. Remember that projection is about them, not you. You might have given a little like seed of something and they just like let it bloom, but projection is really something that they're struggling with. There's a part of them that they don't want, and they're just trying to give it to you. They're trying to do the regifting where they got a wedding gift, like, the bread maker that they don't want, so they're trying to shove it onto you and be like, this is yours now. What you shouldn't do in that moment is play the game of blame there, right? Don't be like, oh, I am the monster. I am the worst. Maybe they're right. Or it's all their fault, right? Don't go, it's all you or it's all me. Think to yourself, this is projection. These accusations, insecurities are more about what they're struggling with inside. And maybe there's part of it that's true about me, but it's not my whole character. It's not who I am. And then please don't do this. I'm so at fault of doing this. It's horrible. But I quickly go into trying to defend myself, right? Trying to be like, wait, no, I'm not, I didn't mean anything bad by it. I was talking about, I over-explain. Don't over-explain. When someone is projecting all their insecurities onto you and you're like, whoa, that's not what happened. Don't go into the over-explanation like I do. Don't give all the evidence for why you will never be that kind of person, or the insecurities are not true, or I know it's so tempting, and as I say this, And I'm able to do this so well as a clinician, but in my personal life, when my mom says like, "You hate me, you're the monster, and you told me I can never see my grandson again." I'm like, "Wait, no, let me show you all of the evidence, and maybe if I show you my reality, then it will solve the problem, and you'll be happy because this horrible monster that you're accusing me of isn't real. You're welcome, right?" Don't do that. And it's so hard to do when someone is accusing you of being like someone who's a villain that's out of your character, right? When you feel like that character attack, of course you want to defend yourself. Of course you get angry. But don't do what I do and go into all the defenses and the counter evidence against what they're saying, because it's not a rational conversation, right? They're feeling such deep levels of shame that they can't even feel the shame, right? They're like, "Oh, I hate this part of myself so much. I'm going to push it onto you, and I can't even tolerate what it would mean if I own part of it." That's such an emotional response. They're in a primitive defense mode. Your logic is not going to work. Okay? So don't get into the back and forth. You could validate the emotion behind it. You could say, "I totally get that you feel judged, that you feel hurt. I'll admit I did judge in that moment. However, I get that you're feeling really hurt, and it's not my intention. That's not how I remember it. I'm here and I love you." Or you could choose to walk away, be like, "You know what? It doesn't seem like this is my struggle. I'm here if you want to talk about, struggling with these kind of feelings, but I really am not going to sit here and be blamed for being a monster," right? As I'm saying this, I'm already like, but what if they are a monster? So it is really tough, but how about this? You're not going to get anywhere in a conversation by trying to figure out who's the monster, who's the problem. A lot of people get into these fights by being like, there's someone who is at fault and they're the all bad, and we're going to figure out which one it is. You're not going to win. You might have done something that you regret. The other person does something that they regret. So try not to do a hot potato of trying to figure out who to blame, and be like, "All right, let's own our parts, and then let's figure out a way forward." But when you're seeing the projection, think to yourself, "This is a projection. I'm not going to take this as a sign of who I am as a person. I'm going to validate the emotion, and I'm going to tell them I care, love, or whatever, and I'm going to walk away, because it's not going to be healthy to allow them to project all over you." It's not going to make them feel better. I mean, it does in the short term, but in the long term, it doesn't really help, because they keep doing it, right? And I'll also say, don't do the mistake I still do, which is holding out hope that they'll accept that part of them that they won't accept. When someone is committed to projecting their insecurities or the parts of themselves they hate onto you, it's so painful, and it just like throws you into a state of existential and identity crisis. Like, am I this monster? And you might crave this healing fantasy. You might crave their accountability, for them to finally say, "Yeah, actually, I accuse you of being an abuser, but I can be abusive sometimes too. I can be really hurtful." Oh, even if I say that out loud, it just like imagining someone like taking accountability for that is so relieving, and would just allow two people just to be individuals and not like all good or all bad, like the villain and the protagonist, right? So don't do what I do, and don't hold on to the dream that they'll finally change and accept that part of themselves. There's nothing you can do to push that to happen. They gotta slowly learn to tolerate the shame, tolerate the parts of themselves that they don't like, and become a whole person, grow up. And you can't force that. You can't force that in them. All you can do is neutrally be like, okay, this is a projection. I love you, I care about you, but I'm not taking this on. I'm not. Let a therapist do that. Let the therapist try to usher the projection back into their identity and sense of self. And most importantly, be self-compassionate. If you are the type of person who, like me, works with or is close to a lot of people who tend to project, it can really shake everything you think about yourself, and it can really wear down your self-esteem. And, there's even this thing called projective identification where if they see that you're a monster, they'll sometimes act in ways that will bring that out of you, right? I'm my worst self around people who tend to project that onto me. Eventually, I do snap back and I do say mean things, and I can be aggressive in ways that I feel bad about. But then I think, you know what? That's not all of me. I have many relationships where we respect each other, we're kind, we communicate. They see me as a good person, I see them as a good person. Of course, we all have flaws. And I'm not going to let this person's insecurities projected onto me become my whole being. So easier said than done, but don't let it gaslight you. So if you are noticing you're in this kind of relationship, check out resources, educate yourself, learn about projection, learn about splitting, and read books like Loving Someone with BPD by Sherry Manning. And this is also all the skills that we teach in Cool of Mind, our program and community for loved ones of people with mental illness or addiction. These are the kind of skills that we teach: how to recognize when someone's projecting at you, how to strengthen your sense of self, and how to stay grounded in your reality when you love someone who is just breaking themselves into little pieces and throwing the bad parts at you. So, thank you so much for listening tonight. If you have any questions or requests, or just want to tell me your story, send me a text at the top of the show notes. And please leave a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and share this with a friend who really needs to hear that they are not the bad guy. See you next week. By accessing this podcast, you acknowledge that the host of this podcast makes no warranty, guarantee, or representation as to the accuracy or sufficiency of information featured in this podcast. The information, opinions, and recommendations presented in this podcast are for general information purposes only, and any reliance on the information provided in this podcast is done at your own risk. This podcast and any and all content or services available on or through this podcast are provided for general, non-commercial informational purposes only, and do not constitute the practice of any medical or any professional judgment, advice, diagnosis, or treatment, and should not be considered or used as a substitute for the independent professional judgment, advice, diagnosis, or treatment of a duly licensed and qualified healthcare provider. In case of a medical emergency, you should immediately call 911. The host does not endorse, approve, recommend, or certify any information, product, process, service, or organization presented or mentioned in this podcast. And information from this podcast should not be referenced in any way to imply such approval or endorsement. Thank you.